Hello again. I sometimes worry, and I mean this quite genuinely, that left wing and progressive people in this country have some kind of mental illness or psychological disorder which prevents them from thinking clearly and in a structured and logical way. Let me explain why I entertain this fear. Last year in Britain, 6,491,948 people registered with GPs. Most of these were people moving from one place to another within the country. However, 752,730 came up on the system as flag fours. This is NHS jargon for people who have been resident for the last 3 months at an address outside the United Kingdom. A tiny number of these will be British people returning from jobs abroad, or perhaps old people who have retired to Spain and have decided now to return to live again in their own country. The vast majority of those, though, of the 750,000 people, were not. They are asylum seekers, refugees, skilled foreign workers who have been invited into this country, and overseas students. What this means is that over 10% of the new registrations with general practitioners last year were foreigners who have not paid a penny into the National Health Service and yet are now as entitled to use it as those of us who were born in this country and who have been paying taxes and national insurance for years, perhaps decades. Now, it must surely be perfectly clear to anybody of the meanest intelligence that if GPs in Britain are called upon to look after an extra 750,000 patients in a single year in this way, then the amount of time and effort which they are devoting to those already living here and registered with GPs must be compromised. The surgeries must become more crowded, the waiting times must be increased, and the ability to see a doctor must be reduced. The only way in which this could not be the case would be if the number of doctors qualifying in Britain that year was miraculously increased by 10%. It was not. And so the only possible, I find this really difficult to put across in simple words. The only possible consequence of having 750,000 foreigners come here and register with GPs in this country is that the National Health Service, which we have all been paying for, must inevitably be less able to deliver care for those living in this country. I simply cannot see how it is possible for anybody not to acknowledge that. And yet, if you were to say this to the average reader of the Guardian newspaper, that immigration was making it more difficult for those of us born here to gain access to our doctor, you would hear howls of protest and cries of racism. It is for this reason that I worry that such people are actually afflicted with some psychiatric syndrome which has damaged their ability to think and reason. It is the only possible explanation for what is seen.